The Magic School Bus Chapter Book. Food Chain Frenzy. Introduction. Hi. My name is Arnold. I am one of the kids in Ms. Frizzle's class. Maybe you have heard of Ms. Frizzle. Sometimes we just call her the Frizz. She is a terrific teacher, but she has some strange ways of teaching. One of her favorite subjects is science, and she knows everything about it. The Frizz takes us on lots of field trips in the magic school business. Believe me, it's not called magic for nothing. We never know what will happen when we get on that bus. Ms. Frizzle likes to surprise us, but we can usually tell when she's planning a special lesson. We just look at what she's wearing. Ms. Frizzle came to school wearing this outfit on the day our class was supposed to go to the Science Museum. I hoped it would be a regular old field trip, but all those plants and animals on her dress made me think the Frizz had a wilder adventure in mind. Wild is right. You'll never believe what happened. Chapter 1. Our trip to the Science Museum is going to be great, said Dorothy, and we usually call her DA for short. She stared out the windows of the magic school business. I can't wait till we get there. Of course DA couldn't wait. She's crazy about everything that has to do with science. I was just glad we were going on a normal field trip for once. There was even another class in our grade going. That meant nothing bizarre would happen. I was pretty sure the Frizz wouldn't risk making it a magic field trip with Mr. O'Neatly and his class around. I always want things to go smoothly, but this time I had a special reason. My cousin Janet was visiting. My parents thought it would be fun for her to spend a day with my class. So far, she'd spent the whole bus ride with her nose in a science encyclopedia. I bet the Science Museum in my town is much bigger than the one your class is. Visit ing, Janet said without looking up. I'm the best science student in my class. Just like DA in our class. Keisha piped up. DA was taking a library book from her backpack. She smiled at Janet, but Janet didn't seem to notice. I'm sure I know more science than anyone in your school, Janet said. My teacher says our class is 3 chapters ahead of everyone else. Oh, brother. I didn't care who knew the most science. I just wanted to get to the museum safely. I kept my fingers crossed that nothing out of the ordinary would happen. We're glad you're with us, then, Janet. The more brain power, the better, Carlos said. We have to try to beat Mr. O'Neatly's class in the Incredible Edibles Science Challenge. I explained to Janet that Mr. O'Neatly was the other teacher in our grade. Mr. O'Neatly is not at all like the Frizz. His classroom is always tidy, and he never plans surprise field trips. He and Miss Frizzle are always making challenges to see which class knows more. The last time we had a contest, it was a tie. This time, our class really wanted to win. I hope you're all hungry to answer questions about the eating habits of animals in the wild, Miss Frizzle called from the front of the bus. Mr. O'Neatly will hand out the challenge questions after we get to the museum. If we get there, that is, said Tim, frowning. This bus ride is taking forever. He sure was right about that. The magic school bus had been on the road for what seemed like hours. I couldn't even see the other bus anymore. But I did see something that made me worry. Liz, our class lizard, unfolded a big map. She scratched her head while she turned it this way and that. Oh, no. Don't tell me we're lost. I groaned and slumped against the bus seat. If we don't get to the museum soon, Mr. O'Neatly's class will start the challenge without us. They'll win. My teacher never gets lost, Janet said. Her hair is much neater than Ms. Frizzle's. And her clothes aren't as busy. Oh. I really hoped Janet's know-it-all attitude wouldn't cause trouble during our field trip. I knew Janet liked to brag a lot. Luckily, no one else seemed to hear her. That's because Janet's voice was drowned out by something louder, the growling in our stomachs. Is it lunchtime yet? Said Ralphie. I'm so hungry I can't think. That was how I felt, too. The hollow ache in my stomach made me feel woozy and tired. Even Liz looked hungry. Her tongue hung limply from her mouth. She stared cross-eyed at the map, as if she couldn't see it clearly. Class, we need to recharge with some food energy pronto. Ms. Frizzle said, look ing at us in the rearview mirror. Let's pull into this gas station so we can fuel up the magic school bus, too. From D.A's notebook, all living things need energy. Energy is what makes things move or change. It's the stuff we need in order to walk, run, think, breathe, eat, grow, and do everything else. Where do we get energy? From the food we eat. Food has energy that is stored inside of it. That was music to our ears. We didn't waste a second taking out our lunch boxes. Soon the bus was filled with the yummy smells of cheese, bread, cold cuts, shrimp salad, bananas, milk, fruit juice, you name it. Looking out the window, I could see Miss Frizzle talking to the gas station attendant. She was holding Liz's map. I was relieved to know we'd be back on track soon. We might even catch up with Mr. O'Neatly's class before they got to the museum. When the Frizz climbed back on the bus, she looked at all of us eating our packed lunches. Variety certainly is the spice of life, said Ms. Frizzle. We humans are lucky to be able to get our food from all parts of the food chain. I've been an expert on food chains since kindergarten, Janet said. Tim looked curiously at the bologna sandwich and apple in his lap. You mean, this stuff comes from a food chain? He said. I thought my mom just got it at the supermarket. Sure. But the food you buy in stores comes from plants and animals, Da told him. A food chain shows how animals eat plants and other animals for food. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a library book. At least, that's what it says in my research. Like I said, Da likes science and research. She opened her book and showed us a page. My book has a better picture of a food chain than that, Janet said. Well, the most important thing to picture, said the Frizz, is that food chains are nature's way of delivering energy to all living things. That's right, Da said. I read that. Every living thing has energy. When one living thing eats another, it absorbs some of its energy. So a deer gets energy from grass. And a cougar gets energy from a deer. A food chain is made of a series of living things. It usually starts with a plant, which is eaten by an animal, which is eaten by a bigger animal, which can be eaten by an animal that is even bigger still. Each plant or animal is a link in the food chain. Everyone knows that, Janet said. Oh. Having one science expert in our class was enough for me. Now there were two and they were competing. Why did of them my parents make me bring Janet? I knew she should have stayed home today. This could be a long field trip, I mumbled. Carlos took a crunchy bite of apple. That explains why I get such a charge out of eating, he said. An energy charge, that is. Very funny, Carlos, Keisha replied. But, where does your apple get its energy? Excellent question, said the Frizz. The energy in plants and the energy we get from the food we buy in stores can be traced back through food chains to one source, Ms. Frizzly explained. It's the source of all energy on Earth. A really big refrigerator? Ralphie guessed. No, silly, Da said. It's the sun. I don't get it. How can energy from the sun get into my sandwich? I asked. Let There Be Light, by Wanda. The sun is the source of energy for all living things, plants and animals. Heat from the sun keeps our planet warm. Light helps plants make the food energy that all living things depend on to live and grow. Take your seats, class. I guess Ms. Frizzle didn't hear me. After she said this, she just sat back down at the wheel and started the engine. She seemed to be in a hurry. Now that our lunch had re-energized us, we could finally catch up to Mr. O'Neatly's class so we could start the incredible Edibles Science Challenge. I thought we were headed to the Science Museum. But you know what? As soon as we started to move, something very strange happened. I think the magic school bus got some extra energy, too. We're taking off, Phoebe said. She didn't mean taking off down the road, either. The front of the bus tipped up straight up in the air. We zoomed up into the sky. Carlos squinted into the blinding light that streamed through the bus windows. This is what I call an illuminating field trip, he said. We're blasting off to the sun. Chapter 2. The magic school bus zoomed upward, past puffy white clouds. Soon the gas station where we had stopped was nothing but a tiny speck far below us. Now we'll never beat Mr. O'Neatly's class in the incredible Edibles Science Challenge. Da groaned. Not to worry, class. I'm sure Mother Nature can serve up the science we need, Miss Frizzle told us. As soon as she said that, the whole inside of the bus began to change. Our seats turned into red vinyl booths, with ketchup, salt and pepper shakers, and a menu on every table. A jukebox appeared at the front of the bus. The magic school bus is a diner, Tim said. He read the neon sign that glowed above the dashboard. The Eat 'em Up Cafe. A flying diner? I said. I looked over at Janet. How was I going to explain this to her? What about the Science Museum? Janet questioned. My teacher always makes sure field trips go the way they're planned. Usually, the Frizz's far-out field trips make me want to crawl under my bus seat. I would love to go on a normal class trip, just once. But I kind of wish Janet would give Ms. Frizzle and the magic school bus more of a chance. At least no one else seemed to be bothered by what Janet said. They were too busy checking out our new decor. And Ralphie picked up frowned. Hey, there's no food on this menu, he said. I was hoping for some dessert. Really? I looked at the menu that was on the table in front of me and Janet. Talk about weird. That menu didn't list a single thing to eat. But what it did have really surprised me. It's the incredible Edibles Science Challenge. I said. The questions we're supposed to answer at the Science Museum? Da looked at the menu on her table and grinned. Yes. It looks like we have a chance to beat Mr. O'Neatly's class after all. There were 6 questions on the menu. And they weren't just questions, they were riddles. Janet and I read the first one, Incredible Edibles Riddle Number 1. This stuff puts the green into green plants. It helps plants trap sunlight and use it to make food energy for all living things. What is it? Answer, I'm sure I'll find the answer first, Janet said. My teacher says my research books are the best. She opened her science encyclopedia and began reading. I had something a little more enlightening in mind, Ms. Frizzle told us. Class, let's take a ride on a sunbeam. She pushed a button, and the magic school bus made a screeching turn. The bus got smaller, too. A lot smaller. Soon we were so tiny that we seemed to become a part of the rays of sunshine that were streaming down toward Earth. Wahoo! The Frizz cried as we streaked along on the bright light. Class, this lovely sunlight supplies living things with all the energy they need to live and grow. We all blinked into the white glare. All of us but Janet, that is. She was so busy read ing that she didn't look up. I still don't understand, Wanda said. How can we turn sunlight into food? We can't, Ms. Frizzle answered. But our planet is full of glorious green plants that can. Wow, said Tim. He pointed out the bus windows. Look at all that green. Our sunbeam was like a high-speed rocket that zoomed toward a big field surrounded by woods. The grass looked like an endless sea of green. As we got closer, I could see grass and lots of clover. We were so small that each round clover leaf looked like an enormous landing pad. Oh, no! We're going to crash land, cried Phoebe. This is the part one really don't like about Frizzle field trips. I braced myself, waiting for us to smash into the leaf. But we didn't crash at all. The bus and our sunbeam struck the clover and went inside the leaf. Who turned on the green lights? Carlos said. The green color is from the clover leaf's chlorophyll. Ms. Frizzle answered. She pointed at some green clusters that were bunched together inside the clover leaf. Chlorophyll certainly adds color to a plant's life. It has another job, too, one that's even more important. Carlos's Q&A, Q. What is chlorophyll? Chlorophyll is a substance that exists only in green plants, marine algae, and special kinds of bacteria. This weird green light is making it harder to read about what makes plants green, Janet said. She frowned and held her book closer to her eyes. We can do more than read about it, we can see for ourselves. D.A. said. She pointed to the green clusters outside the bus windows. That chlorophyll allows plants to trap sunlight and change it into food energy that plants and animals can use. Quite right. Animals can't change the sun's energy into food because they don't have any chlorophyll in their bodies, the Frizz explained. But plants have the right stuff. Keisha's whole face lit up when she heard that. Then chlorophyll is the answer to the first riddle, she said. Bravo, Keisha! Ms. Frizzle cheered. Just then, Janet pointed to a spot in her science encyclopedia. I found it, she said. Chlorophyll is the answer. It makes plants green and traps the sun's energy. Is there an echo in here? Carlos said. I couldn't believe it. Janet had been so busy reading that she didn't even realize we had already answered the riddle. Janet filled in the blank on our menu of incredible edibles riddles. I'm sure I'll find more right answers than anyone else, she said. She shot a smug look at D.A., then read the second riddle. Incredible edibles riddle number 2. Plants follow this recipe for making food. Mix together sunlight, chlorophyll, water, and carbon dioxide gas, and presto. Carbohydrate food energy is formed. What is the name of this process? Answer, that riddle made me more confused than ever. Food, 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 I said. We keep hearing about how plants make food, but I don't see anything to eat. Ms. Frizzle's eyes sparkled. Let's take chances. Get messy. And cook up some plant food. She opened the bus door, and we all flew right out of the bus. Miss Frizzle, Carlos, Janet, Ralphie, and Phoebe floated straight toward some water that flowed into the clover leaf from the roots and stems. Da, Keisha, Tim, Wanda, and I landed on bubbles of gas that gurgled up through some holes at the bottom of the leaf. What's for lunch? Carbohydrates. By Tim. Most of the food we eat includes carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can store energy, and both plants and animals use carbohydrates to live and grow. All carbohydrates are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It figured that Janet and Da held onto their books. Somehow, I had hung onto something, to the menu of our incredible edibles riddles. My teacher never pulls messy surprises, Janet said. She wiped a spot from her book. How can I research about plants ing food with all this guck? It's more than just guck, Wanda said. It's water and carbon dioxide gas. Those are the ingredients plants need to make food, remember? I know that, Janet said. I've got all the information right here in my book, after all. She didn't seem to realize that the information wasn't just in her book. It was all around us. I had a feeling the answer to the next riddle was taking place right in front of our eyes. We were so small that we had actually landed on top of the tiny particles that made up the water and carbon dioxide gas in the leaf. I grabbed a particle and held on tight. All the sunshine and chlorophyll around us made everything seem really bright and green. The sun's hot energy made our atoms